It doesn't matter where you live in the country, if you're looking for that vehicle that adds a little more spice to your daily commute, or maybe you have some hobbies that take you outdoors, there are not two vehicles on the market that are more equipped to satisfy your four-season needs than both the Wrangler as well as the Ford Bronco.
So today we're going to compare the new Jeep Wrangler Willys to this Ford Bronco Black Diamond. Both this Bronco and that Wrangler are the entry-level off-road trims. Both can be purchased for just over $50,000. Let's find out which one's better for you.
This is my amazing son Austin, and my name is Todd, and we are Performance on Wheels. Thank you for joining us today as we check out two of the most legendary off-road vehicles on the market today.
Previously, we checked out the Wrangler 392 and compared it to the Ford Bronco Raptor. At the $100,000 price point, we ended up thinking the Bronco Raptor was a better pick. Today, we cut that in half. At just over 50 grand, which one of these is a better buy? In the video today, we're going to compare exterior looks, overall size, interior, and we're going to take these for a drive to overall decide which one is best. Let's start off by talking about the exterior of the Jeep Wrangler. Finished in 41 paint with 33-inch tires. This thing looks fantastic. I'm a really big fan of it.
As you mentioned at the beginning of the video, these are the entry trim for the off-road. You go bigger and badder as the price tag goes up, but this is where if you want to get into a Wrangler or you want to get into a Bronco, this is the out-of-the-box, off the factory line, off-road ready to go trims, both the Willys as well as the Black Diamond. You can go up from here too, right? You can have these exact same vehicles. Both can come with a 35-inch tire, the 35 package on the Wrangler, as well as the Sasquatch package over on the Bronco. But these are very even, I call it. We're only about a $1,400 difference between the vehicles we're showing today. The Wrangler is $1,400 more than the Bronco. That's the MSRP. This is a pretty cool comparison, in my opinion, the vehicles we picked to share with you guys.
Now we got all that sticker talk out of the way. Let's compare these things. I'm pretty excited. How about you?
Yeah, I am too, and I think this is pretty obvious when you're looking at the front of these two, like which one looks better to the eye. You might be crazy to pick the Bronco over the Wrangler when you're looking at the front of these two vehicles we have in today's video. That's because the gloss black on the front of the Wrangler and how it contrasts to the color, like it looks super appealing, right? And you throw the daytime running lights, which that's an option or whatever, but that looks like a much more appealing vehicle driving down the road versus like the bottom of the barrel plastic front bumper.
We got fog lights though.
Yeah, the plastic grill. They both have fog lights and they both look nice when they're turned on, but looking at the front of these two vehicles, I'm picking the Wrangler all day. It looks so much cooler.
I fully agree. I love the whole front end of the Wrangler here. It does look really good. It looks a lot more, I don't know, expensive than the Bronco for being at such similar price points. It's crazy just how much higher of a trim it looks like the Wrangler is at versus the Bronco, because there's just so much more plastic on the front of this thing that's plastered to the front of it. I'm definitely going with the front of the Wrangler in this particular comparison. Let's move on to the side.
So when we move on to the side, I have to say that the Wrangler again takes the cake. Not only do the Wild Peak Mountain tires, the 285 7017s, look a lot more aggressive than the General Grabber 260 75 17s. Essentially, they're like different variations of a 33-inch tire, which the Wrangler looks a lot more aggressive. You can also see when you look at these side by side, the 1.5-inch ground clearance that the Wrangler has over the Bronco. I mean, even when we talk about the wheel designs that we have on today's video, these wheels that are on the Bronco, they look kind of cheap. They look kind of cheeseball.
I would 100% agree. It's really interesting to me just how much nicer the exterior of this Wrangler looks over the Bronco here. It just looks like a much more expensive or luxurious vehicle looking at the outside of it. It looks like it's a higher trim, so it's very surprising that they're at such similar MSRPs.
And as we're transitioning from the side to the back, I do want to point out just a couple more things on the side. Notice that obviously, again, off-road trims, both of these vehicles from the factory have the rock slides down the side, right? And if you look underneath even more, you'll see that they have some very similar protection. You know, Ford calls it the bash plate, and over on Jeep, we just have some skid plates underneath. It looks like Ford actually has a little more protection under the engine front end. There's another plate there that the Wrangler doesn't have. But other than that, like underneath the fuel tanks, and you have a nice spot right up front there to hit some objects out on the trails. which that's really cool. The other thing that stands out to me as we're transitioning to the back, look at the difference in size of windows on the Bronco versus the Wrangler. The passenger side, the passenger and driver windows are a lot bigger on the Bronco, but then you get back to the top and it switches. The Wrangler windows are a little bit bigger, and you'll notice the Bronco door is a bigger opening where the Wrangler's windows are bigger back on the back side.
I think a big part of that is because if you're not familiar or haven't walked around, touched, or got your hands on either one of these vehicles, the windows on the Bronco are frameless, which allows for a lot more space, and it also allows for a lot more viewing visibility from the inside. I typically have issues with like getting a headache or getting claustrophobic in the back seats of vehicles. In the Bronco, it's a lot harder to do that with how big the rear windows are compared to the Wrangler, which are much smaller because they're a framed window.
If you haven't noticed yet, when you look at these vehicles side by side, there's not much of a difference in dimensions. The Bronco's only about an inch longer than the Wrangler, but as we looked at it, we don't know where that is. It might be in a bumper or something. It's very hard to pick up. But when you talk about the width, taking the mirrors out of the equation, the Bronco is about 2 inches wider than the Wrangler, and that can definitely be felt, and we'll talk about this more once we get to the inside. When you talk about cargo space here on the back, the doors open the same, the windows open the same, but as you can see here, my legs are dramatically further inside the Bronco compared to the Wrangler. And there is a substantial amount more storage inside of the Bronco versus the Wrangler. Just things to keep in mind if you're going to be trailing this vehicle a lot, out on the trails I should say, or if this is your daily driver, there is a lot more cabin space inside of that Bronco compared to the Wrangler.
This is something I find interesting because they look like the same length on the side, right? Well, look at this angle as we're looking at the side. The Bronco's A-pillar is like 4 to 5 inches further forward than it is over on the Wrangler. Now we do that same thing and we look up at the front bumper. If we look at the front bumper, the Wrangler's front bumper sticks out from the grill so much further than the Bronco's, where the Bronco's grill goes like all the way up to the front. So it's like the Wrangler is a shorter vehicle, but it has longer bumpers, if that makes any sense. Where over here on the Bronco, it's extended further out, so you have more space, like lengthwise.
Getting back to the looks on the rear end, is there anything that just really stands out to you on one versus the other?
Just honestly, the tire that is on the back of that Wrangler. I know we already talked about it before, but it looks so much more aggressive. The wheel looks so much better. But quite honestly, we have two big plastic bumpers. We have two non-LED taillight housings. Ultimately, I don't see a whole lot of differences.
They look very similar, right?
Very, very similar.
When we were talking about the exterior, right, when we go back to the top trim of these, the Raptor and the 392, we said that the Raptor Bronco won the award without question. It was such a unique vehicle compared to the Wrangler, and now we're looking at $50,000, $40,000 less, whatever that dollar amount is, but middle of the road. And I think we both agree that the Wrangler, hands down, has a better cosmetic appearance, a better, more aggressive appearance out of the box versus the, I don't know, it just looks plain and boring Bronco.
I need to give a huge shout out to Apple Autos for supplying the Bronco and the Wrangler that are used here in today's video. One of the things I really like here in Shakopee, Minnesota, in practically the same parking lot, they have a Ford dealer and a Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer. So if you're cross shopping the Bronco and Wrangler, you can pull them right up next to each other and shop just like that. If you guys are interested in either one of these vehicles, be sure to check out the link down in the description below, or any Bronco or other Wrangler product. My dad here's a little bit taller than me, so he's gonna hop inside and see if his feelings change.
So we get inside of the Wrangler, and I have a few opinions right away. The Wrangler feels more like a toy right off the bat. I've always thought this of a Wrangler. You get in here, it's just kind of giddy. It gets you excited because of the sitting position, because of like how close you are to the dashboard, how up and down everything is. It's a unique experience compared to a lot of vehicles you get in.
Two near 6-foot adults sitting inside of the Wrangler next to each other. Our shoulders aren't necessarily touching, but they are close, just a couple of inches apart. Overall, I'm pretty comfortable in here. However, compared to the Bronco, I do feel like I'm sitting up a little bit higher. I feel like I'm more on top of the road.
What I like about this Wrangler is I actually have a leather wrap steering wheel. There's some fun stitching on the inside of the steering wheel. And when I look at the dashboard, I really dig this fabric that they put on the dashboard with the gold stitching, and there's a nice little gold metal piece at at the end there to tie it off. We love the buttons. The buttons are really cool in the Wrangler. The screen update was much needed. There's a lot of similarities, but I do want to point out some of the similarities as well as differences just on these two trims so you can be informed. Now, these are options on both of the vehicles, but just be aware of this. The one thing I'm going to start with is I actually have carpet in the Wrangler, where over on the Badlands I have a rubber floor, so a lot easier to clean out. And obviously we have cloth seats on the Wrangler, where we have the like marine grade vinyl seat, a lot easier to clean out over on the Bronco. So the Bronco kind of takes the cake as far as like getting dirty, cleaning out, keeping it looking nice. If you're going to be out on the trails a lot, the interior is a lot more friendly for that. More plastic, no fabric, easy to wash out. So take that into account. What I will also point out is we have our axle locker, rear only on both of these. We don't have the front locker. Those are, again, options as you go up in trim. We have the nice switch here on the Wrangler, the nice surrounded by red, letting you know that there's something special about this button, where it blends in really nice when you get into the Bronco. It's up on the Hero pad up top. The other thing that both vehicle has is like pre-wired auxiliaries. Now the Bronco is up top. You can flip those switches 1 through 6. That's really cool, and they're pre-wired to different locations in the vehicle. The Wrangler only has 4 different auxiliary switches that come from the factory, with obviously some less pre-wiring throughout the vehicle. I'm now sitting in the Bronco, and there's definitely some additional items to talk about. You know, let's just take a step back in time when the Bronco was released, and a lot of their advertisement was talking about things that made the Bronco better than the Wrangler, right? The fact that they put the mirrors onto the body versus the doors. You take a Wrangler door off, now all of a sudden you don't have a mirror. Whereas the Bronco, you get your mirror still. That's a big deal. That's fun, right? You don't have to buy an accessory to have a mirror if you want to take your doors off. The other thing that I think is really cool about the Bronco versus the Wrangler, pros, cons to everything in life, right, is you don't have the crossbar like directly over your head or in between the front and the rear passenger. The Bronco's wide open, so you take your tops off and it's just wide open space, where you have that big sound bar as well as roll bar in the Wrangler. Some of the safety features that I think are interesting from one vehicle to the other is this particular Bronco, like these are options that you can get in both of them, but this Bronco has lane keep assist and no like radar sensing cruise control, where the Wrangler, it has radar sensing cruise control, but does not have any lane keep assist. I do love the 12.3-inch screen that comes standard in every Bronco now, and 25 and newer also has a full digital dash. So from a technology standpoint, if that's more your thing, if you like that feel of luxury, the tech is better in the Bronco versus the Wrangler, but the Wrangler just has those fun little touch points. Like it has the little Easter eggs that you can see of the Wrangler that's embossed in different areas, and kind of this fun carbon fiber-ish material when you look down into the center console or down into the different areas in the vehicle. The Bronco's a lot more ordinary. There's just, it's just plastic everywhere. They throw some different colors here and there. It definitely feels more like a car than it does like a toy, that whole experience that the Wrangler gives. It's hard to know how this looks on camera, but just being in the Bronco after sitting next to each other in the Wrangler, you feel like that 1 or 2 inches of difference in width is substantial when you're actually sitting in here. Like the elbow room, the shoulder room, it feels much bigger in the Bronco. And it also even feels different like over where your arm is against the door, that you don't feel so like tight together.
One thing that I want to iterate right before we start is the Wrangler has solid axles and the Bronco has independent suspension. One thing that you're immediately going to notice when hopping between the two of these is the steering feel when standardly driving them on the road. For example, if I shake the steering wheel like so, I have 0 feedback. The Wrangler drives completely straight with this much play in the steering wheel. Literally shaking it 2 to 3 inches both ways. The Wrangler will drive dead straight and you can't feel anything in your seat. That is just the delay using a solid axle. That's simply just how it is. But it makes you not feel as connected to the road. It doesn't make you feel like you have as much feedback. You have to put more steering input in to go just as far. And it also makes the Wrangler feel a little bit unstable at high speeds. It feels like it could blow over. It feels like it could tip over. It feels like it's not nearly as connected that you're going to feel as an independent front suspension. Independent front suspension is like your standard car. This is more off-road oriented. No matter which one of these you pick, I just like to demonstrate it every time. You can turn in a near perfect circle in either one of these vehicles. So no matter which one you get, parking will not be a problem. You can just keep on going in the same circle. It's very impressive, unlike pretty much anything else on the road. Accelerate into the Wrangler. 30, 40, 50, and there is 60 in the Wrangler. It does about a 7-second 0 to 60. It's not very quick. It feels very underwhelming, and it's not the greatest sounding vehicle I've ever heard. And it's very noisy. You can hear a lot of the powertrain inside of the cabin here at all times. It's a pretty loud powertrain, which is super enjoyable when you're in the 6.4, the 392. But here in the 2-liter, it's not the greatest sounding thing in the world. I will admit, compared to the JK, the JL really stepped up its game throughout the years of production in terms of canceling out exterior noise. It's not quiet in here by any means, but it's dramatically better than the Wranglers of the past for sure. Another thing with those solid front axles is it doesn't minimize or mitigate any of the feel of any small bumps on the road. You feel every single one of them, whether it's a pebble, whether it's a small crack in the road, you will feel it shake throughout the interior. I kind of like it because it makes me feel like I know what's going on underneath me and the vehicle is responding to that, but others may not. It is not a luxurious feeling by any means, just something I feel that others should know. Immediately hopping out of the Wrangler into the Bronco. Can you guys hear how much better that sounds? This is the 2.3. I have a lot of experience behind the wheel of the 2.7, so not a whole lot of time behind the wheel of the 2.3. Lot of engine noise inside of the Bronco, just like over in the Wrangler, but this sounds so much better. It has a great deep rumble to it. It's very aggressive sounding. I really like the way that it sounds, and also right off the bat inside of the Bronco, our bodies move right when I touch that steering wheel. I have immediate feedback. I know what is going on in front of me. I can feel the road more directly inside of the Bronco. I have better feedback. It is better to drive the Bronco day to day on the road, on the highway, and immediately with me talking, I can hear the lack of, there's almost like an echo I was hearing inside of the Wrangler. I don't hear that, and a lot of that is because of the insulated tops that are standard in the Bronco, unlike the Wrangler. I also feel a little bit warmer, which could be a part of it as well, because this is much warmer feeling than it was inside of the Wrangler. So it is a lot more comfortable place to be right off the bat. I'm further from my passenger. I have more room to sprawl out. It feels so much more stable. I can take my hands off the road or the wheel, and the Bronco just keeps on going straight. I don't think I would do that in the Wrangler. Another thing I need to reiterate, both of the vehicles we're looking at today are spec'd with hard tops. Soft tops are available. Both the vehicles we are looking at today, you can easily take the tops off, doors off of, all of that good stuff. Yes, it is slightly easier to take the tops off of the Bronco. Yes, the doors weigh a certain amount of pounds less, but in reality, it is a very similar process to removing the tops, removing the doors. We've owned both Broncos and Wranglers, and I can assure you it's an easy process on either one that you get. Hopping out of the Wrangler into the Bronco, it feels like the Bronco has a slightly larger turning radius circle than the Wrangler does, but ultimately, like I said, it's still one of the best on the road. This thing can park anywhere you want to put it. Accelerating in the Bronco. 40, 50, 60. Not only does it sound better, but 0 to 60 can happen in about 6.5 seconds versus the 7 over inside of the Wrangler. And both of these are the base engines, by the way. You can get larger engines in both. You get the 3.6, you can get the 2.7 inside of the Bronco here. And I also like the 10-speed more inside of the Bronco versus the 8-speed ZF that is over in the Wrangler. The Wrangler ZF, I love ZF transmissions. They're known for reliability. They're very robust. It feels sluggish though. It has a little bit of delay between shifts. It very much so is snappy inside of the 392 model that we drove, but it just didn't feel nearly as responsive while we were driving the 2.0 today. The 10-speed snaps off shifts. It has also a lot of selectable drive modes, which change up how the powertrain overall reacts. You cannot change the drive modes inside of the Wrangler unless you're in four-wheel drive. You can go into the 4x4 high setting or whatever it is, or off-road plus. The Bronco just feels more fun to drive when it comes to driving it on the road. I have better engagement, I have selectable drive modes, I'm more comfortable. It's a better day-to-day vehicle.
So if you're cross shopping these brand new, like your warranties are identical, 3-year, 36,000 mile bumper to bumper, 5-year, 60,000 mile powertrain. You have 2 4-cylinders, right? The gas mileage is supposed to be slightly better on the Wrangler. Low 20s versus high teens, like is essentially the difference there. So a lot of similarities when it comes to like warranty, a lot of similarities when it comes to options, right? So it just really comes down to what you want, right, Austin?
Yeah, it truly does. And there's also one more thing that we should touch on. The Wrangler over here has the aluminum hood, the aluminum doors, but the steel body, where the Bronco has the full aluminum body. Just one thing that we should bring up, but they both still obviously have steel frames as well. They're still body on frame vehicles. Both of them are just like trucks when it comes to that sense. I think it just comes down to your wants and needs. You got to do a wants and needs analysis, is something that I like to say in that sense.
There you go. You sounded like a grown man here.
The Wrangler over here, I absolutely love the way this thing looks. It looks fantastic. It's so much more of a toy feeling vehicle, and it's more off-road capable. The solid front axles give it a more suspension travel. It gives it the opportunity to also modify it to further advance over the Bronco when it comes to its capabilities off the trails.
Yep.
If that's something that you plan on doing and you plan on pushing this vehicle off-road, the Wrangler is no doubt the vehicle to get here. It is better than the Bronco when it comes to off-roading.
Yep.
Both of these vehicles are not designed for Baja, so it doesn't really matter in that sense. They're not very fast, unlike our recent comparison of the Wrangler 392 and the Bronco Raptor. Those are completely different things. These are both slow crawlers. So if you intend on slow crawling, the Wrangler makes more sense. We did push these off-road. They're incredible vehicles. These both have locking dips. They're both very capable, but the Wrangler is more capable, and there's no doubt about it. But if you live in a climate like we live in here in Minnesota, if you have to drive 3 hours away to even get to an off-road trail, when you get to the off-road trail, it's mediocre at best. You're not going up a mountain, which, by the way, the Bronco can do. There's just more risk of potential part failure in the front suspension components. The Bronco is a better pick when it comes to a comfort daily driving perspective. You have
100%.
a quieter interior. You have a more stable front end. You have a vehicle that's easier to park and easier to place. You have a vehicle that's more comfortable to ride in with more space, with more cargo space.
Yeah, hands down.
This is the toy. This is a daily driver, in my opinion.
Yep.
That is the best way that they can possibly describe it. Which one is best for you is your opinion, and it comes down to your wants and your needs.
Use case scenario, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us today on Performance on Wheels. We do look forward to seeing you next time.